comida hermanas apaches. Why al dia siguiente, 700 guerreros rodearon. The sun was rising slowly over the dry, golden plains, casting long shadows across the rugged land. The man, whose name was Samuel, had lived alone for many years on the outskirts of a small settlement. He had learned to survive on the land, planting small crops, tending a few animals, and relying on the little resources that nature provided. Life had taught him to be patient, to work hard, and to respect the quiet rhythms of the world. Every day he would wake before the sun, fetch water from the river, and check on his small garden. It was a simple life, and he had grown used to the routine. Despite the solitude, Samuel never felt lonely because he had a deep connection with the land, the animals, and even the sky above. One morning, as he walked along the riverbank carrying a bucket of water, Samuel noticed movement near the tall grasses by the edge of the woods. At first he thought it might be a deer or some small animal looking for food, but as he came closer, he saw two figures huddled together. They were girls, both very young, no older than 16 or 17, with dark hair and eyes that reflected fear and exhaustion. Their clothes were worn and tattered, their feet dusty and blistered from walking long distances. They looked frightened, and Samuel could see that they had not eaten properly for days. Hunger and hardship were written clearly on their faces. Samuel hesitated for a moment. He knew that encountering people from the nearby Apache tribe could be dangerous. Conflicts had occurred before between settlers and the tribe, and not every encounter ended well. But as he looked at the girls' faces, something inside him stirred. He could not turn away. Compassion outweighed fear, and he stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Hello," he said softly. "Are you okay? Do you need some water?" The girls flinched at first, keeping a cautious distance, but their eyes reflected both suspicion and relief. They nodded quietly, unable to speak immediately. Without hesitation, Samuel set down his bucket and motioned toward the water. "It's clean," he said. "You can drink as much as you need." The girls approached slowly, still wary, but the look of desperation in their eyes overcame their fear. They drank quickly, and Samuel watched carefully, making sure they were safe. After they drank their fill, he opened a small cloth bag he carried and offered them some bread. It was not much, just enough to ease their hunger for a little while, but to the girls it seemed like a feast. They accepted the food silently, their eyes glistening with gratitude. Samuel felt a warmth in his chest, knowing that a small act of kindness could make such a big difference in someone's life. As the morning passed, Samuel learned a little about the girls. They were sisters, traveling together after losing their parents to an illness months before. They had been trying to survive on their own, moving quietly from place to place to avoid danger. Their journey had been long and difficult, and Samuel could see the toll it had taken on them. They were strong in spirit, despite their small, fragile frames. Samuel admired their courage. Many people would have given up, but these girls kept moving, hoping for a chance to survive. He felt a deep respect for them, and a sense of responsibility grew inside him. He wanted to help them, even though he knew the risks. For the next few hours, Samuel stayed near the river with the girls, talking gently and offering what little comfort he could provide. He learned their names, Leela and Naya, and listened to their stories. They spoke of their home, a small village far from the plains, of the friends and family they had lost, and of the hardships they had faced along the way. Samuel was amazed at their resilience. Despite everything, they had not lost hope. They laughed softly at his small jokes and smiled when he showed them how to catch small fish from the river. It was a fragile moment of peace in a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. Samuel also taught them some small skills he had learned over the years. He showed them how to identify safe plants to eat, how to find water in the dry plains, and how to make simple traps to catch small animals for food. The girls were quick learners, eager to soak up every bit of knowledge he offered. He admired their curiosity and determination. Even in their difficult situation, they were willing to learn and adapt. Samuel realized that in helping them survive, he was also growing himself, learning patience, understanding, and a deeper sense of connection to the world around him. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Samuel led the girls to a small clearing where he had built a few simple structures to store supplies and provide shelter. It was not much, just a few wooden frames and cloth coverings, but it was better than sleeping exposed on the ground. He offered them blankets and guided them to a shaded spot to rest. Leela and Nea lay down quietly, their faces softening as they felt safe for the first time in many days. Samuel watched over them, alert to any signs of danger, but also feeling a sense of calm that he had not experienced in years. It was a rare moment of trust and peace between people who had only just met. Throughout the afternoon, Samuel reflected on his decision to help the girls. He knew that it was risky. Many settlers would have warned him, telling him to avoid contact with the tribe, but he could not ignore the immediate need in front of him. His heart told him that helping these two sisters was the right thing to do, even if it brought challenges later. There was a strange sense of fulfillment in his actions, a feeling that he was part of something larger than himself. He realized that kindness, even in small amounts, had the power to change lives. As evening approached, Samuel gathered some extra food for the girls, making sure they would have enough for the night. He built a small fire to cook a simple meal, and together they shared it, sitting close to the warmth and light. The sisters spoke softly about their hopes for the future, of finding a safe place to live and people who would care for them. Samuel listened, encouraging their dreams and assuring them that they were not alone. That night, as they fell asleep under the stars, a bond had formed between them, a connection built on trust, compassion, and shared humanity. It was a moment that Samuel knew he would never forget, even though he had no idea what challenges lay ahead. Samuel remained awake for some time after the girls had fallen asleep. He looked at the horizon, thinking about the choices he had made and the possible consequences. He knew that helping the girls might draw attention, that people might misunderstand his intentions, and that danger could come from unexpected places. But for now, he allowed himself a small sense of peace. He had done the right thing. He had given food and safety to two young lives in need, and that, in itself, felt like a victory. The stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to the simple, courageous act that had taken place on the edge of the plains. In the quiet of the night, Samuel reflected on the journey that had brought him here. His own life had been full of struggles and hardships, yet he had survived through perseverance, careful planning, and respect for the land. Now he realized that helping others was a new kind of challenge, one that required not just survival skills, but compassion, courage, and wisdom. He understood that every decision mattered, that even small gestures could have ripple effects far beyond what he could see. And as he finally closed his eyes, ready to rest, he felt a quiet hope that the simple act of feeding two hungry sisters might be the start of something meaningful, something that could change lives in ways he could not yet imagine. The morning after Samuel had helped the two sisters dawned bright and clear, with a soft breeze rustling the golden grasses. The three of them woke slowly, the girls stretching and yawning as they tried to shake off the stiffness of sleeping outdoors. Samuel brought water from the river and handed it to them, reminding them to drink slowly. Their faces brightened at the cool, refreshing liquid. For a moment, everything seemed calm, almost peaceful. But Samuel knew that peace in the plains was often fragile and could disappear without warning. He had learned over the years that the world was unpredictable, and that even the smallest gesture of kindness could attract attention, sometimes in dangerous ways. As they sat together, eating a simple breakfast of bread and a few dried fruits, Samuel noticed the girls were quieter than usual. Layla, the older sister, looked at Samuel with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Do you think anyone will come looking for us?" she asked softly. Samuel shook his head slowly. "I hope not," he said, "but we must always be careful. There are many people who do not understand our actions, and fear or suspicion can travel faster than kindness." Nea, the younger sister, looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. Samuel realized that their journey had been more dangerous than he had fully understood. They were not just tired, they were constantly alert, always ready for sudden threats. He felt a surge of protectiveness, knowing that he had to help them feel safe, even if only temporarily. After breakfast, Samuel decided to teach the sisters more skills that could help them survive. He showed them how to track animals by reading footprints in the soil, and how to recognize birds' calls to find sources of water nearby. The sisters watched carefully, imitating every movement and repeating every word he said. Layla, in particular, showed remarkable focus, her sharp eyes noticing details that Samuel himself sometimes missed. Nea, though younger, had an intuition for reading the land, sensing changes in the wind or shadows that hinted at hidden paths or dangers. Samuel realized that these girls were not only resilient, but also intelligent and quick learners. Their ability to adapt reminded him of his own early days, when he had to survive alone in the wilderness, learning from trial and error. As the morning passed, Samuel became more aware of the subtle signs around him. A distant rustle of leaves, the flash of movement near the tree line, even the sudden silence of birds, all seemed louder now, more pronounced. He could feel that something had changed, though he could not yet tell what it was. Samuel knew that the Apache tribe was near, as their land stretched not far from his homestead. He had encountered them before, sometimes with friendly exchanges and sometimes with tension. He understood their customs, their cautious nature, and their fierce protection of family and community. Any interaction with them could be delicate, and one wrong gesture could provoke suspicion or anger. Samuel's instincts told him to stay alert, to pay attention to every sound, shadow, and movement. By mid-morning, Samuel decided to take the girls to the edge of a small wooded area nearby, where he had found wild berries and edible plants. He wanted them to see that the land itself could provide sustenance if they knew how to observe it carefully. As they walked, he spoke softly about the importance of respect. "Everything here has a purpose," he said. "The plants, the animals, even the wind and the stones. We must take only what we need and leave the rest. If we do that, the land will care for us in return." The sisters nodded, listening attentively. They reached the berry bushes, their faces lighting up as they picked the ripe fruits. Samuel smiled, pleased to see their spirits lift. Even small moments of joy could strengthen their courage and help them endure the hardships of their journey. But as the morning turned to noon, Samuel noticed something unusual. A group of men appeared on the distant ridge, moving steadily but deliberately. At first he thought they might be hunters or travelers, but as they came closer, he saw the unmistakable signs of warriors, strong, determined movements, adorned with traditional clothing and carrying weapons. His heart tightened. Samuel realized that these were Apache warriors, and their numbers were growing. It seemed that word of the girls' presence had spread, though he did not yet know how. The very act of kindness that had seemed so simple yesterday now threatened to bring danger to all three of them. He quickly signaled the sisters to stay calm and move quietly toward a small ridge that offered a better vantage point. Samuel explained what he knew to the sisters in hushed tones. "We need to be careful," he said. "They might want to talk or they might see us as a threat. We must stay calm and show that we mean no harm." Leela nodded, her eyes wide but determined. Nea clung to her sister's arm, trembling slightly. Samuel knew that fear could cloud judgment, so he focused on keeping their spirits steady. He reminded them of everything he had taught them so far, how to observe, how to move quietly, and how to communicate without words. It was a tense moment, but Samuel's calm presence provided reassurance. The warriors began to approach more closely, their movements careful and calculated. Samuel could sense the tension in the air, thick and heavy. Every step he took, every gesture he made was critical. He remembered stories he had heard about misunderstandings between settlers and the Apache, about small mistakes leading to conflict. He could not allow that to happen. He motioned for the sisters to remain behind a small rock outcropping while he stepped forward slowly, hands raised to show peace. His heart pounded, but he kept his expression calm. The warriors stopped a short distance away, forming a wide circle. Samuel could see their eyes fixed on him, alert and watchful. One of the older warriors stepped forward, raising his hand as a signal for silence. Samuel realized that this was a test, a moment where his intentions would be judged. He spoke softly, carefully choosing his words. "I mean no harm," he said. "I only helped these girls because they were in need. I have no intention to fight or take anything from your people. I respect your tribe and your ways." The warrior's gaze did not soften immediately. Samuel could feel the weight of centuries of mistrust and fear in that look. It was clear that the warriors were evaluating his every word, every movement, every gesture. Meanwhile, Leela and Naya watched from their hiding spot, unsure of what would happen next. Their trust in Samuel was strong, but the sheer number of warriors and the intensity of their attention made the situation frightening. They held their breath, waiting for a sign. Samuel, sensing their fear, gave a small nod, reassuring them silently. He knew that his calmness was their anchor in this storm of uncertainty. For several long moments, there was silence, broken only by the faint wind rustling the grass and the distant call of a bird. The tension seemed almost unbearable. Then slowly, the older warrior gestured for Samuel to stay where he was. Other warriors spread out slightly, maintaining a respectful distance. It became clear that they were not there to attack immediately. They were observing, listening, judging the situation carefully. Samuel understood that this was an opportunity to show goodwill, to demonstrate that his intentions were genuine. He remained calm, speaking softly, making gestures of respect, and avoiding any sudden movements. The sisters remained hidden, watching, learning, and hoping that the man they trusted could navigate this dangerous moment successfully. Hours seemed to pass as the standoff continued. Samuel spoke gently, explaining that he had found the girls in need and had offered food and water. He showed them that he had prepared extra provisions and simple shelter, nothing that could be seen as a threat. Slowly, the warriors' expressions began to soften, though their eyes remained watchful. Samuel could sense that trust was beginning to form, fragile but present. He realized that understanding and patience were as important as courage in this moment. The smallest sign of respect could make the difference between conflict and peace. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, Samuel finally saw the warriors begin to relax slightly. One by one, they lowered their weapons, though they did not leave entirely. The older warrior stepped closer and spoke softly in their language, gesturing toward the girls. Samuel could see that he was explaining the situation, that the girls were unharmed, and that Samuel had acted with good intentions. Leela and Naya emerged slowly from their hiding spot, keeping their heads down but trusting Samuel's guidance. It was a moment of cautious relief, a fragile victory that came from calmness, respect, and understanding. By the time the sun began to set, the warriors had gathered in a loose formation nearby, still alert but no longer hostile. Samuel, the sisters, and the warriors shared a quiet moment, understanding that while danger still lingered, there was also an opportunity for communication and respect. Samuel realized that his small act of kindness the day before had ripple effects far beyond what he could see. It had brought both risk and the chance for connection, showing that even in a world full of tension and misunderstanding, compassion could create bridges. As night fell, Samuel guided the sisters back to their temporary shelter. They sat together near the small fire, reflecting on the events of the day. Leela spoke quietly. "I did not think anyone could be so kind, even when danger is near." Samuel nodded, understanding that this was a lesson for all of them. The day had been a test of courage, patience, and understanding. It had shown that even small acts of kindness could have powerful consequences, both good and challenging. That night, as the stars shone over the plains, Samuel, Leela, and Naya lay quietly under the blankets. The world was still dangerous, and tomorrow might bring new challenges. But for now, they felt a connection that went beyond fear, a bond formed through trust, care, and courage. Samuel knew that the days ahead would test them further, but he also knew that together, they could face whatever came, armed with respect, wisdom, and the lessons of the land. The next morning, Samuel woke with a sense of unease. Although the previous day had ended without violence, he knew that the peace could not last forever. The land around him seemed different somehow, as if the wind carried whispers of uncertainty. He watched the horizon carefully while the girls slept, noticing movements in the distance that made his heart race. His instincts told him that the situation was about to change, and he needed to be ready. The quiet calm of the morning only made the anticipation sharper. Every rustle of grass, every distant bird call felt heavier, as though nature itself was alert to the tension in the air. Samuel knew he had to prepare. He gathered his few tools and supplies and moved quietly around his property, checking the perimeter and ensuring that nothing could be used against them. He instructed Leela and Naya to stay close, to watch carefully, and to remain silent unless he spoke. The girls understood immediately. They had learned much from him already, the importance of observation, patience, and caution. Samuel felt a mixture of pride and worry. The girls had shown courage and intelligence, but the danger they were about to face was unlike anything they had experienced before. By mid-morning, Samuel's fears were confirmed. In the distance, he saw the unmistakable movement of hundreds of riders approaching. He counted as best as he could, rows upon rows of warriors, their numbers overwhelming. He realized with a jolt that there were at least 700 Apache warriors surrounding the area. They moved swiftly but deliberately, their eyes scanning the land, their hands ready on their weapons. The sight was terrifying, yet Samuel remained calm, knowing that panic could make the situation worse. He signaled the girls to stay hidden behind a small hill and took a deep breath, preparing himself to face the greatest test of his life. As the warriors drew closer, Samuel thought carefully about his options. Running was impossible, the numbers were too great, and the open plains left no cover. Fighting would be foolish and dangerous. The only path forward was caution, respect, and negotiation. He stepped into the clearing, hands raised in a gesture of peace. The wind carried the sound of his voice as he spoke softly but clearly, hoping to be heard over the sound of approaching hooves. "I mean no harm," he said. "I only helped the girls because they were in need. I respect your people, your home, and your way of life." His words were simple, but he hoped their sincerity would be enough to prevent a misunderstanding that could cost lives. The warriors halted in formation, creating a wide circle around Samuel. Their leader, an older man with deep lines on his face and eyes that seemed to see everything, stepped forward. Samuel recognized him from stories he had heard, a respected figure among the Apache, known for wisdom and fairness but also for fierce protection of his people. The older man studied Samuel carefully, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Samuel realized that this was a test. Every movement, every word, every breath mattered. He remained calm, lowering himself slightly to appear non-threatening while maintaining steady eye contact. He knew that showing fear could be misinterpreted, but showing arrogance could provoke anger. Balance was crucial. While Samuel faced the warriors, Leela and Nea stayed behind the hill, holding their breath and watching. Their hearts raced, but they trusted Samuel. They had seen his courage before, seen his patience and understanding, and they knew he would do his best to protect them. Nea's hand shook slightly as she held her sister's arm, but Leela squeezed it reassuringly. They had no weapons, no ability to fight, only faith in the man who had shown them kindness, and in the hope that he could communicate with the warriors effectively. It was a moment of tension so thick that even the breeze seemed to pause. The older warrior finally spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "Why are these girls with you?" he asked. Samuel understood enough of their language to reply, but he also knew that gestures and demeanor mattered more than words. He bowed his head slightly in respect, pointing gently to the girls and then to himself. He repeated slowly, "They were hungry. They needed help. I only gave food and shelter. I mean no harm." The leader's eyes narrowed, measuring the truth in Samuel's actions. Other warriors murmured among themselves, and Samuel could feel their scrutiny like a weight pressing down on him. The situation was delicate. One wrong move could turn curiosity into anger, suspicion into violence. Minutes passed like hours as the warriors continued to evaluate him. Samuel remained still, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. He realized that trust had to be earned in this moment, not demanded. Slowly, he gestured to the girls to come forward, showing that they were unharmed and that they had chosen to stay with him voluntarily. Leela and Nea stepped into view cautiously, their faces showing both fear and hope. The warrior's eyes followed every movement, observing how the girls interacted with Samuel, how they looked at him with trust rather than fear. This silent display of loyalty and respect began to speak louder than words. As the afternoon wore on, Samuel noticed subtle shifts in the warriors' formation. They were still numerous and armed, but their posture softened slightly. The older warrior approached closer, speaking again in a language Samuel partially understood. Samuel responded with careful gestures and soft words, demonstrating peace and understanding. He shared simple signs of goodwill. He offered water from his bucket, placed it on the ground for the girls to drink, and nodded respectfully to the leader. These small acts, he hoped, would show that he meant no harm and that his intentions were genuine. The girls watched in awe, learning from the delicate balance of courage, humility, and careful communication. Despite the tension, Samuel took the opportunity to observe the warriors. He noticed patterns in their movements, ways they communicated silently, and the respect they had for their leader. He realized that their approach was not one of mindless aggression, but of caution and protection. They were assessing him, testing his sincerity, and ensuring the safety of their people. Understanding this gave Samuel a sense of control. He knew that if he could respond appropriately, with respect and patience, he might navigate the situation without violence. It was a high-stakes lesson in human behavior, observation, and empathy. Even as the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the plains, Samuel continued to negotiate silently through gestures and calm presence. He offered small signs of peace, placing a hand on his chest, bowing slightly, showing care for the girls, and avoiding any threatening movements. The older warrior observed closely, occasionally nodding or speaking quietly to others. Samuel could see the tension in the younger warrior's eyes slowly give way to curiosity. The girls, sensing the shift, allowed themselves to relax slightly, though they remained cautious. It was a delicate dance, a balance between fear, trust, and understanding. Hours passed and the sun began to dip behind the distant hills. The warriors had not attacked, nor had they left. Samuel realized that this was a crucial moment, a turning point. He decided to show another act of goodwill. From his small pack, he brought out extra food and water, offering it to the warriors as a sign of peace. The gesture was simple, yet it carried meaning. The older warrior paused, observing, and then allowed some of his people to accept the offering. This small act broke part of the tension, showing that Samuel's intentions were genuine. The girls watched in relief, their trust in Samuel reaffirmed, and their courage strengthened by the demonstration of calm and wisdom. As twilight approached, Samuel and the sisters sat quietly, observing the warriors as they prepared to leave for the night. The older warrior spoke softly, giving instructions to his people, and Samuel understood that they were retreating, not out of anger, but to consider and communicate among themselves. The moment of danger had passed for now. Samuel reflected on the day, realizing how close they had come to disaster, and how trust, patience, and careful observation had saved them. The experience was exhausting, yet it strengthened his bond with the sisters and deepened his understanding of the land and the people who lived on it. Finally, as night fell and the stars began to shine above the plains, Samuel led the girls back to their small shelter. Their faces were tired but relieved. They sat near the fire, sharing a quiet meal and speaking softly about the events of the day. Leela whispered, "I did not think it was possible to face so many and survive." Samuel nodded, smiling gently. "It is possible," he said, "when we respect others and remain calm. Courage is not just about strength, it is about wisdom, patience, and understanding." The girls listened closely, absorbing the lesson as they sat close to the fire, feeling safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. That night, as the wind blew softly over the plains, Samuel, Leela, and Naya lay under their blankets. The day had been exhausting, filled with tension, fear, and careful navigation of danger. But it had also been a moment of growth, understanding, and trust. They knew that tomorrow might bring new challenges, yet they felt stronger because of what they had learned. Samuel's heart was heavy with responsibility, but also light with hope. He understood that life in these lands was unpredictable, yet moments of compassion, courage, and respect could shape their survival in ways nothing else could. The day after the tense standoff, Samuel woke with a lingering unease. Though the warriors had left the previous evening, he knew the situation was far from over. The plains around him felt alive with silent whispers, as though the wind carried the memory of the massive group that had surrounded him and the sisters. Samuel understood that even acts of kindness could ripple in ways he could not predict. Helping Leela and Naya had brought attention to his homestead, and he feared that curiosity or suspicion could turn into confrontation at any moment. He moved quietly, checking the perimeter and observing every sound and shadow. The sisters, sensing Samuel's tension, stayed close. Leela and Naya had learned much about survival in the last few days, but this was a new level of uncertainty. They followed Samuel silently as he inspected the small shelter and the surrounding land, mindful of any signs of intrusion. Samuel spoke softly to reassure them. "We did the right thing," he said. "We showed kindness, and that cannot be taken away. But we must also be prepared for anything. Awareness keeps us safe." The girls nodded, understanding the balance between hope and caution that Samuel had mastered over the years. Throughout the morning, Samuel tried to maintain normal routines. He gathered water, checked his small garden, and prepared some food for the girls. Yet every noise from the distant hills made him pause. A sudden movement in the grass, the sound of birds scattering, or the echo of distant hooves could make his heart leap. He knew that the Apache warriors were organized and careful, and that word of his kindness toward the sisters could have reached many ears. While the previous encounter had been tense, it had also shown him the delicate power of trust. He realized that the days ahead would demand not only courage, but also wisdom, patience, and respect. By midday, Samuel decided it was time to communicate more openly with the sisters. He explained what he believed might happen next. "The warriors may return," he said quietly, "not to harm but to understand. They may need to discuss among themselves what is best. We cannot assume anger, but we must be alert. Our actions now must reflect honesty and care." Leela and Naya listened intently. Their fear had not disappeared, but their trust in Samuel gave them a calm determination. They understood that surviving the plains was not just about food or water. It was about understanding people, respecting boundaries, and navigating human relationships with care. The afternoon sun climbed high, casting long shadows across the land, and Samuel noticed a movement in the distance. A smaller group of warriors approached, far fewer than the massive force he had seen before, but enough to demand attention. Samuel stepped forward carefully, hands raised in the familiar gesture of peace. The girls stayed behind a rock outcropping, observing. He greeted the approaching warriors slowly and calmly, showing no signs of fear or hostility. They stopped a short distance away, observing him with caution. Samuel knew that this approach was deliberate. They were sending a message, testing him again, but in a more measured way. He decided to act with care, combining respect and honesty. Samuel brought water and simple food forward, placing it on the ground as a gesture of goodwill. He spoke softly, emphasizing that his intentions had been true and peaceful. "We mean no harm," he said. "We only want safety and understanding. The girls are unharmed, and I hope to maintain peace." The warriors studied his every movement, slowly relaxing their posture. Samuel could sense that they were beginning to trust his sincerity, though wariness still lingered. Leela and Naya peeked from their hiding spot, seeing that Samuel's calm approach was working. The older warrior, the same leader from the previous day, stepped forward again. Samuel recognized the careful observation in his eyes, a combination of authority, curiosity, and caution. The leader spoke quietly to the smaller group, then turned back to Samuel. Though he could not understand every word, Samuel understood the meaning through gestures and tone. They were still deciding whether to believe him, still weighing the situation carefully. Samuel bowed slightly in respect, nodding to show that he understood their authority. He realized that trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned through consistent, sincere actions. Hours passed as Samuel continued to demonstrate patience and calm. He allowed the warriors to approach the shelter, inspecting it without obstruction or protest. Samuel stepped aside, showing openness while keeping the girls behind him, protected. He spoke softly about the land, the resources, and his care for the girls, emphasizing respect for the warriors' culture and customs. The leader nodded slightly, signaling understanding, and other warriors began to observe less as enemies and more as cautious allies. Samuel could see the transformation taking place slowly, almost imperceptibly, from suspicion to cautious respect. Throughout the day, Samuel also noticed small acts of humanity from the warriors. They did not take food or water without permission. They moved with care to avoid disturbing the girls, and they showed an unspoken code of honor in their interactions. Samuel realized that he was witnessing the strength of discipline, culture, and leadership firsthand. The experience was both humbling and enlightening. He understood that while fear often drives human behavior, respect and understanding could create bridges where suspicion once existed. The girls watched, learning a lesson that was more valuable than food, shelter, or safety: the power of patience, empathy, and integrity. By late afternoon, the warriors had gathered around the shelter, maintaining distance but showing signs of calm. Samuel recognized that he had passed an important test. Through patience, transparency, and respect, he had demonstrated that his intentions were honest. Leela and Naya stepped forward cautiously, allowing themselves to interact briefly with the warriors under Samuel's careful guidance. The older warrior spoke softly, observing their demeanor, and Samuel could see the relief that slowly spread across their faces. Trust had begun to take root, fragile yet present, and it was a victory born of careful action rather than force. As evening approached, Samuel used the opportunity to strengthen the bond further. He shared more about the land, pointing out safe places for water, edible plants, and natural shelters. He encouraged Leela and Naya to ask questions, to interact respectfully with the warriors, and to demonstrate understanding and calm. The sisters absorbed every detail, learning to navigate complex situations with intelligence and respect. Samuel realized that this moment was a turning point, not only for survival but for character. They were learning the true meaning of courage, not just physical strength but wisdom, patience, and moral clarity. Night fell slowly, casting a gentle glow over the plains. Samuel, Leela, and Naya sat quietly near the small fire, while the warriors withdrew slightly to a respectful distance. The day had been exhausting, filled with tension, observation, and careful negotiation, yet it had been successful. Samuel reflected on what had occurred, understanding that every gesture, every word, and every movement had contributed to the outcome. He also realized that challenges were far from over. The plains were unpredictable, and the actions of people both near and far could change the course of events at any moment. Before resting, Samuel spoke to the girls gently. "Remember what we learned today," he said. "Courage is patience and strength is understanding. Kindness can create trust, but it can also attract attention. We must always be mindful, but we must not lose hope. Every day is a chance to learn, to protect each other, and to show respect." Leela and Naya nodded, feeling the weight of his words but also the reassurance they carried. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, yet they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Samuel felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility for the growth of these young girls, knowing that the lessons of the day would stay with them forever. That night, as the stars glittered overhead and the wind whispered through the plains, Samuel lay awake, reflecting on the events. The warriors were still near, a silent reminder that vigilance was necessary, yet he also felt a quiet hope. The bonds that had begun to form through honesty, patience, and respect could endure challenges. He thought about the future, the dangers that might come, and the lessons that had been learned. Every act of kindness, every careful gesture, and every word spoken with sincerity could shape not only survival but understanding between different people. It was a lesson he would carry with him always, and one that he hoped the girls would carry too. As the fire burned low, Samuel finally allowed himself a moment of rest. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also understood that they were prepared in ways beyond physical readiness. They were equipped with courage, patience, wisdom, and trust, tools more powerful than any weapon. The experience of the day had shown that even in a world of uncertainty and potential danger, respect and empathy could create pathways to peace. And as sleep finally claimed him, Samuel felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that they had survived, learned, and grown stronger together. The next morning, Samuel woke before the sun rose, as was his habit. The plains were calm, but the memory of the previous days, tension lingered in his mind. He knew that today could be a turning point. The warriors had remained near his homestead for 2 days, observing and assessing, but there had been no violence. Samuel understood that this pause was an opportunity to strengthen trust, to ensure the girls' safety, and perhaps to build a lasting understanding between different people. He moved quietly, checking the shelter, the surrounding area, and the small garden. Everything seemed undisturbed, yet the air was charged with cautious expectation. Leela and Naya stirred quietly as Samuel prepared breakfast. The girls had grown more confident in the past days, yet their eyes still reflected the shadow of fear. They moved carefully, learning to observe without panicking, to act without drawing unnecessary attention. Samuel watched them with pride. They had come a long way from the frightened, hungry girls he had first met by the river. Their courage and intelligence were visible in the way they interacted with the environment, and even in the way they stayed calm under the watchful eyes of the warriors. Samuel knew that their growth was as important as survival itself. After breakfast, Samuel decided to take the sisters closer to the river to show them another way to gather food safely. As they walked, he reminded them of the lessons they had learned so far: observation, patience, caution, and respect. The sisters listened attentively, absorbing every word. Samuel pointed out small, edible plants, explained how to read animal tracks, and showed safe places to collect water. He emphasized that survival was not just about strength or speed, it was about awareness and intelligence. The girls asked many questions, showing curiosity and thoughtfulness, and Samuel felt a sense of hope that they were becoming capable young women, ready to face the challenges of the world. While they were near the river, Samuel noticed a movement on the distant ridge. At first, he felt a flicker of fear, but then he saw the familiar figures of the Apache warriors. There were fewer of them than the first time, and they appeared more relaxed. Samuel knew that the leader had sent scouts to observe, not to attack. He signaled to the girls to remain calm and guided them to a safe spot, maintaining a visible gesture of peace. The warriors approached slowly, their hands empty, moving with careful, respectful steps. Samuel's heart pounded, but he reminded himself to remain calm. The outcome depended not on panic, but on careful communication and sincerity. The older warrior, the leader, stepped forward, speaking quietly to Samuel in their language. Though Samuel could only understand bits and pieces, the tone and gestures were clear. He was willing to hear, to observe, and to judge for himself whether Samuel's intentions were true. Samuel bowed slightly in respect and replied in gestures and simple words, showing that he understood the importance of respect and honesty. Leela and Naya peeked from behind him, sensing that this was a crucial moment. They felt nervous, but the trust they had developed in Samuel gave them courage. The balance between fear and hope was delicate, yet it was present in every careful gesture. The leader gestured toward the girls, asking them silently if they were safe and willing to speak. Samuel encouraged Leela and Naya to show calm and respect, and they nodded slightly. The sisters stepped forward slowly, keeping their gaze on Samuel as a guide. Their presence was a powerful statement. The warriors could see that the girls trusted him and that he had not forced them in any way. This visual confirmation reinforced Samuel's words. It was a moment where action spoke louder than language, a silent communication of honesty, care, and mutual respect. Throughout the day, Samuel continued to demonstrate patience and openness. He offered food and water, explained how he had cared for the girls, and showed that his shelter and provisions were meant only to help them survive. The warriors observed closely, testing, evaluating, and slowly relaxing. The atmosphere shifted from suspicion to cautious understanding. Samuel realized that trust had been built not just through words, but through consistent, respectful action. The girls mirrored his calm, learning that courage often comes from inner stability and moral clarity rather than force or confrontation. By mid-afternoon, Samuel had gained a fragile but significant trust from the warriors. They still maintained a respectful distance, but their posture was less tense, their eyes less wary. The leader spoke quietly to the group, and Samuel could see subtle nods and gestures indicating that they were convinced of his good intentions. He understood that this trust was a turning point. The danger that had seemed overwhelming 2 days ago was slowly being replaced by the possibility of understanding and coexistence. Leela and Naya smiled faintly, feeling relief and hope that they had not dared to feel since they first met Samuel. Samuel knew that the next step was critical. He decided to show the warriors the girls' daily routines and how he had helped them. He led them through the small garden, explaining how he had grown food for survival, how he had taught the sisters to gather water safely, and how he ensured that they had rest and security. The warriors observed silently, clearly impressed by the care and respect Samuel had shown. This transparency was essential. Samuel knew that honesty, demonstrated openly, was the strongest form of communication. The girls walked beside him confidently, showing that they were safe, cared for, and willing to interact under his guidance. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, Samuel realized that the warriors were preparing to leave for the evening. The leader approached him, speaking quietly. Though Samuel could not understand every word, he recognized the tone of respect and acknowledgement. The leader gestured for the sisters to approach, and they stepped forward. Samuel watched as the girls exchanged brief words with the warrior in gestures and simple phrases. The moment was small, yet it carried immense significance. The girls' safety had been recognized, their trust had been observed, and Samuel's intentions had been confirmed. It was a triumph born of courage, patience, and respect. Before the warriors departed completely, the leader spoke to Samuel once more. Samuel bowed in gratitude, offering gestures of peace and continued respect. The warriors nodded and moved away slowly, maintaining a distance but clearly signaling that no harm would come. As they disappeared over the ridge, Samuel felt a wave of relief, exhaustion, and quiet satisfaction. He knew that the situation had been dangerous, that the risk had been high, but that careful actions, honesty, and respect had brought resolution. Leela and Naya ran to him, embracing him tightly, their relief palpable. Samuel held them close, grateful that the ordeal had ended safely. That evening, Samuel, Leela, and Naya sat near the fire, reflecting on the events of the past days. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the overwhelming presence of the warriors, yet they had survived without violence. The lessons were clear. Courage was patience, strength was wisdom, and trust was built through consistent action and respect. The girls had grown in confidence and understanding, learning skills that went beyond survival. They had learned the value of empathy, honesty, and careful observation. Samuel felt proud of their growth, knowing that these lessons would stay with them for life. As night fell and the stars began to shine over the plains, Samuel realized that the experience had changed him as well. He had faced fear, navigated uncertainty, and demonstrated that kindness could create understanding even in the most dangerous situations. He had learned that actions, more than words, were the true measure of character. The bond between him and the girls, and the cautious respect he had earned from the warriors, were proof of the power of integrity, patience, and moral courage. Life on the plains was unpredictable, but through careful choices and unwavering compassion, he had created a path towards safety and understanding. Before sleeping, Samuel spoke softly to the girls. "Remember this day," he said. "It shows us that even in difficult times, we can find a way through with honesty, courage, and respect. Fear will always exist, but so will hope, and we must choose how we respond to both. Today, we proved that understanding and patience can protect us as much as strength." Leela and Naya nodded, feeling the truth in his words. They were no longer just frightened travelers. They had become part of a story of courage, resilience, and human connection. The next morning, Samuel woke to the sound of birds singing and the gentle wind brushing the plains. The warriors were gone, and a sense of calm had returned. Yet the lessons of the past days remained clear in his mind. He guided the girls to gather water, forage safely, and tend the garden, reinforcing all that they had learned. Samuel understood that life on the plains would always bring new challenges, but the experiences of the past days had prepared them to face them with wisdom, courage, and compassion. Together, they had survived, grown, and learned lessons that no danger could erase. As the sun rose higher, Samuel, Leela, and Naya stood together on the ridge overlooking the plains. They could see the vast landscape stretched before them, beautiful, dangerous, and full of possibilities. Samuel reflected on what had occurred: the initial act of kindness, the tense standoff, the careful navigation of fear, and the ultimate trust and understanding that had been achieved. It was a journey that showed the power of empathy, patience, and moral courage. The girls looked at him with admiration and gratitude, their faces bright with hope and confidence. Samuel smiled, knowing that they had not only survived but had grown stronger in every way. By midday, the trio returned to the shelter, preparing to continue their journey through the plains with new knowledge, resilience, and courage. The experience with the warriors had left a permanent impression on all of them. Samuel understood that life was unpredictable, yet through careful choices, understanding, and compassion, humans could navigate even the most dangerous situations. The story of these days would remain with them forever, a lesson in trust, patience, and the enduring power of kindness.